What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants roster is pretty much complete and ready for the 2023 season, but there are a few free agents still out there on the open market that they could consider signing just to bolster this roster, get this starting lineup to perfection right before the regular season. Now, of course, you've got training camp coming up at the end of next month. It'll start probably around a month from today. They'll kick off with those practices. That'll ramp up into the preseason. And then, of course, sooner or later, just before the start of the regular season, they'll have to make those final roster cuts. And again, some free agents could sneak their way onto the roster between now and then, depending on whether or not the team feels they need to add some depth. But we've identified 3 free agents that could provide that depth and maybe even push into the starting lineup for the New York Giants if they do go out into free agency and sign them. So we're going to go ahead and break those 3 players down in today's episode. But before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you are new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and make sure you go follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Fireside Giants. Plenty of New York Giants content for your social media channels on the daily. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And who is the first free agent that you think the Giants should consider signing?
I'm doing great, man. I just can't wait for real football to start. I can't wait to have really fun stuff to talk about, like the progress this team is making, all the updates we have for you guys. And as you know, daily episodes. You're not going to miss anything listening to us every day. And of course, we have some good conversations down in the YouTube comments. So we appreciate the love and all the engagement. It means a lot to us in our community. So we appreciate you guys as always as we head into a positive era of the New York Giants. And if you've been with us for a while, you know we've been through a lot of crap. We've learned a lot of lessons. And at this point in time, I feel like we're ready to enjoy some positivity and some growth and some development and hopefully into what will be a contending team. And I think that we are on that path, and it's happening pretty quickly. So I'm excited to see what the Giants do in the near future here. But talking about some free agent stuff, the most important thing to consider here, and the one thing I want to get out of the way, is the Giants' current salary cap space and some things that they could do to open up some more space. At the end of the day, we're talking about a couple players here that will cost a little bit of money. And the Giants, you always want to go, any NFL team wants to go into the NFL season with some salary space available just in case. Just in case you have to supplement a big injury or deficiency or whatever it might be, you want to have that security blanket, kind of available. And right now the Giants only have $3.8 million in salary space, which certainly is not a lot. So the ways they can open up more kind of room to work with. Darnay Holmes, there's $2.7 million there that they can kind of allocate elsewhere if they want to cut him. I think they're going to let him compete, though, for the time being. You could extend Leonard Williams. You could extend Adoree Jackson. But these are a lot of decisions I don't believe the Giants are going to make right now. I think more so they're going to wait until probably after the season to make any decisions there. So I definitely wouldn't expect any big moves or whatever it might be in the coming days regarding any of those players. So at the end of the day, I kind of feel like the Giants have a good opportunity to go out and actually sign a free agent that could impact this team now, especially if we're thinking about being a contender. And, the first one is Yannick Ngakoue, Anthony. So give me a little breakdown about Yannick Ngakoue. What do you think he would cost and why you think he could be an impact player for this Giants team if they were to go in that direction?
So to get the cost out of the way, Yannick Ngakoue is apparently searching for an $8 to $10 million contract, which is something the New York Giants probably can't afford. However, he doesn't seem to have much of a market being generated. So that price tag could come down as Yannick Ngakoue looks to sign with the team for the upcoming season. Now, Ngakoue is a player who has been a sack maestro for the past several seasons. Every season of his career, he's recorded at least 8 sacks, and he's also forced a whole lot of fumbles. He's a high-quality impact pass rusher for a defense, and if the New York Giants want to bolster their pass rushing unit, they should look no further than Yannick Ngakoue. So we know that the Giants have had interest in Ngakoue in the past. Giants fans have had plenty of interest in Ngakoue in the past because he's hit the open market a few times. He's been on the trade block a few times. His name always seems to come up like every single offseason. His name seems to come up as a player that makes sense for the Giants, and it's still true. He still makes sense for the Giants because when you look at this team, their edge rushers are great, right? They have Kayvon Thibodeaux and Azeez July. But behind those two players, who's really making an impact from a pass rushing standpoint? Jihad Ward is a great run defending, edge setting edge rusher, and you have Oshane Ximines, who is okay as a rotational guy, but that's about it. So aside from Kayvon Thibodeaux and Azeez July, the Giants don't have any premier pass rushers on the edge. Now, I get it. They have Leonard Williams, they have Dexter Lawrence. Those are phenomenal interior pass rushers, but they could totally afford to add some more quality from the edge rusher spot. And again, I think the Yannick Ngakoue rotating in there with Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez July, that sounds like it could be one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. And here's something that all Giants fans should know. You can never have too many good pass rushers. We should know that from Super Bowl 42, and we should know that from Super Bowl 46. How much depth did the New York Giants have on their front seven back in those Super Bowls? I mean, you had Strahan, you had Tuck, you had Umenyiora, you had Jason Pierre-Paul in 2011-12. You had so many guys just rotating in. Of course, Steve Spagnuolo with the patented NASCAR package where he put all the edge rushers down on the front line in the 4-3 defensive scheme. Just revolutionary stuff there from Spags. And again, it's something that the Giants could implement with this team if they added a couple more pass rushers. So I like Yannick Ngakoue. Again, the price might be a little high, but there are some moves that the team can make to free up some cap space. They could sign him to a 2-year deal, backload the contract into next year if they wanted to sign him. And Ngakoue would be one of those players that he's good for 8 sacks. Every single season of his career, he's put up at least 8 sacks. So he's good to get after the quarterback a solid amount and be a really, really good contributor and probably one of the best players on the Giants defense if they were to sign him. So I think that adding him in here and rotating him with Thibodeau and Ojulari, it just makes so much sense if they can afford it. But again, affording it might be the issue. But Alex, what are your thoughts on Yannick Ngakoue, how he would fit in with this defense? And then who's the next free agent that you might be taking a look at?
So personally, I'm not like of the subscription that we desperately need Yannick Ngakoue. I think that I actually really like Azeez July and Kayvon Thibodeau. I like that combination. They're young. And a lot of people will say like Azeez July is injury prone. I would argue he's played, 15 games in his rookie season. Last year was the only season where he was like actually missing substantial time. And he fell ill to like kind of similar issues the rest of the team did. Like Leonard Williams was injured for a lot of the season and like Adoree Jackson missed a lot of time. Like I think that this new scheme, this new system, the field, there's a lot of different variables that could have kind of played an impact in or played a role in a lot of these guys getting hurt. Now, Azeez July gained 10 pounds of muscle mass last offseason, and I think that may have added a little bit more pressure to his lower body, so maybe he needed to strengthen his legs to kind of keep up with that weight. Who knows? There could be a lot of reasons, but I'm not willing to give up on Azeez July right now. Like, he can be one of the best pass rushers on this team. He could be one of the best pass rushers in our division. From a pure pass rush standpoint, I think he has that type of talent. Like he had 6 sacks last year and like played like 6 games or like 7 games. That's incredible. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if he can maintain that health, he could have a double-digit sack season for us, and I think he could be one of our best players. I'm not willing to give up on that. If you sign Yannick Ngakoue, it's with the contention that he is starting. Right, he is starting alongside Kayvon Thibodeau, and Azeez July is not playing on an every down basis. I don't want to sacrifice that just yet. I'd rather go out and get a good backup, a good depth piece, maybe someone that can supplement his health a little bit and help him like just maintain his body, instead of a guy that's going to take his job. You know what I mean? So, end of the day, I kind of feel like I trust Azeez. I want to give him another season to prove his worth. It's possible it doesn't pan out. I mean, we still have Oshane Ximines, and he's not a great player, but he was decent for us when called upon last year when Azeez did miss time. I actually like the 2 other guys a little bit more if we're going to spend the money than Yannick Ngakoue personally. I think that our defensive line is stout on paper, and I want to give them a chance to put it on the field since they are very young. At least a bunch of them are very young, and the potential is limitless. I just think that messing with it, just for the sake of messing with it, may not be the best strategy, but I do like the other 2 guys you have mustered for us today.
Yeah, by no means am I viewing Ngakoue as a replacement for Azeez July. He's much older, first of all, and second of all, I think Azeez July is a better player, but having the rotation of 3 guys is kind of necessary for the success of a defense because when you get on third down and you need that extra pass rusher, and that extra pass rusher is just Oshane Ximines, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure on third downs. But having Ngakoue get in there on third downs, you're talking about getting those 8 sacks per year and having a really nasty defensive front 7. So that's my take on Ngakoue, but let's talk about the offensive line because the Giants did quite a bit to improve the offensive line this offseason by taking John Michael Schmitz in the second round of the draft. That's a massive upgrade at the center spot, and they're hoping that Evan Neal can take a big step forward at right tackle. Andrew Thomas will continue to hold down the fort at left tackle. Right guard, Mark Lewinsky is going to maintain that spot, but at left guard, we have a little bit of a competition and there's no clear-cut starter there. Ben Bredeson versus Joshua Azeez, who takes the starting job? Well, what if they also threw a third veteran player into the mix? What if they reunited with 2013 first-round pick of the New York Giants, Justin Pugh? He spent the last several seasons with the Arizona Cardinals. He did injure himself, or he did get injured in 2022. He tore his ACL, had a season-ending injury in October, but he just recently tweeted out that he's healthy and he's starting to look at other teams that he could sign with to play this upcoming season. And Pugh, playing left guard for the majority of his career at this point, he could make sense as a depth piece at the left guard spot, or a guy who steps in and competes with Bredeson and Azeez for the starting job, or at least competes and makes them play better and gets one of them more ready and more prepared for the starting job. So Justin Pugh, not the best player in the world, but it would likely be a very cheap contract. You could get him for a very affordable price point, especially considering he's coming off of the injury. He's 32 years old now, but there's not a whole lot of offensive line talent still out there at this stage in the offseason. So if the Giants feel like they want to add some more depth, a veteran guy like Pugh is pretty much the best they're going to get. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on Justin Pugh and the prospects of signing him at this stage in the offseason?
Right, Justin Pugh, obviously you mentioned kind of the ACL tear. He's feeling better now. We remember him well from his days in the Giants, and he actually wasn't really a bad player with the Giants by any means. He maybe was a little slightly above average, maybe slightly average. I think that he would be a fine player to bring on a cheap deal. Coming off the injury, this is the type of player, like for what it's worth, Anthony, that I would love to sign. And for the reason is he's going to be very cheap, coming off a big injury. He's going to be a guy that's going to compete. He has experience. He has success. I have a lot of faith in Josh Azeez. I have a lot of faith in, or maybe not a lot of faith, but I have somewhat faith in Ben Bredeson. Azeez definitely is a developmental piece that I don't think is necessarily ready just yet, but he missed a lot of time in his rookie season due to that neck injury, so I think there's a lot of developmental time still left for him to kind of take hold of. But if you look at him kind of as a pure player, I do love his tangible traits, and I think he could be a quality one for us as he continues to kind of grow within this team. But then you look, over at Ben Bredeson, he's been pretty solid for us when he's actually played. Now, the reason I bring in Justin Pugh is because I think that we need someone to compete with Mark Lewinsky too. I'm not just handing out jobs anymore. Like, Mark Lewinsky was a signing that was made because we needed a guard desperately to replace, I forget his name, went to the Baltimore Ravens. What was his name again? He was so good for us too.
Marshall Yanda. Marshall Yanda, that was his name.
No.
Not Marshall Yanda.
The guard, not Marshall Yanda.
No.
Why are we
I'm
both
drawing a blank
blanking
as
so?
well. It's not Marshall Yanda. He was a great player.
I can picture his bald head so perfectly in my head.
I know. His beautiful bald head.
He's
he was
so
a great
shiny.
guard. We got him from the Cleveland Browns. You all know who we're talking about, but for some reason, we're just both blanking on the name.
I'm going to find it so fast right now.
His name. This is embarrassing. Got him in exchange for Olivier Vernon. I know exactly who you're talking about. I just can't remember.
He's so bald, and he's so freaking
name.
Kevin Zeitler is what his name is.
Kevin Zeitler.
I miss Kevin Zeitler. And everyone was freaking out at the fact that everyone was like, oh, we should have cut him. We're saving money. I was against cutting Kevin Zeitler for the entire time, and I feel like I won that one. At least one. I've lost a lot of them, but I feel like that one I was right on. Nonetheless, Mark Lewinsky, we signed him to be a supplementary piece until we find like a long-term solution. He was really he was bad last year for the first half, and the second half of the season kind of picked it up a little bit. But I'm not trying to like give him a starting job either. Like, I'd rather bring in a guy like Justin Pugh who has experience that could compete with him and like at least push him. And that competition kind of fuels everybody. It fuels Ben Bredeson. It fuels Josh Azeez. It fuels Marcus McKethan coming back. It fuels, Glowinski. I feel like it can't be a bad thing. And it's probably such a cheap deal coming off the ACL tear. Like, why not? And the Giants obviously know him pretty well. So we'll see kind of what happens there. I think that would be a fine signing, a very cheap one, a lot cheaper than Yannick Ngakoue. So I feel like that is a reasonable free agent acquisition if the Giants wanted to go in that direction. But the third one and the lastly here is Marcus Peters. Now, Marcus Peters, guys, is very familiar with Wink Martindale, as we know. He spent a lot of time in Baltimore early in his career. He spent the first 3 seasons with Kansas City, and then he went to LA and Baltimore in 2019, then spent the last, 2 years. He didn't play in 2021, but he played in 2020, and then 2022 with the Baltimore Ravens. So he spent only 1.5 seasons, I guess you could say, with Baltimore, so he knows Wink well, and, has done some good stuff in the past, really, really solid coverage grades in some of those seasons. Last year played 791 total snaps, gave up 559 yards, 5 touchdowns, interception, had 8 penalties, so definitely not the best. But again, you're not bringing in Marcus Peters to be a starter. You're bringing him to be a depth piece. Now the question is, do the Giants have better depth pieces than Marcus Peters right now? You kind of have Nick McLeod is going to be this kind of utility DB. They're kind of like transitioning him to like this safety role. I think maybe Nick McLeod is going to be the guy that replaces Julian Love's role altogether. You have Cordell Flott, you have Aaron Robinson. Those two guys can play on the boundary. So, is Marcus Peters better than them? I'd say he's certainly more proven. I'd say he probably is cheap at this point in his career at 30 years old. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing in Marcus Peters, at least to compete. But again, is Marcus Peters really signing a deal just to compete for a back-end spot? He might want legitimate playing time. He might be waiting for an injury to happen, and that way he can get paid a little bit more. So, currently a free agent. I wouldn't be surprised if he was waiting for a couple of weeks here, see kind of what happens, the shakeouts of the roster, and if any injuries happen and teams kind of come calling for an experienced veteran corner to step in and he can get a little bit more money for it. That's probably what I would do if I was him. But what are your thoughts on Marcus Peters and kind of if you think he would even be an upgrade on this Giants team?
So the reasons I think Marcus Peters makes sense, well, the reason is because he has the connection to Wink Martindale and knows the defense. The reason I don't think he makes sense is because I don't think he would be much of an upgrade. Again, I think a lot of Giants fans are sleeping on Amani Oruwariye. I'm going to keep mentioning his name. Detroit Lions cornerback that the Giants signed this offseason. He's still young. Yes, he had a bad season in 2022, but he's a talented player who is a perfect scheme fit for Wink Martindale. I think that he could be the guy that steals playing time out of all these Giants defensive backs. Signing Marcus Peters, well, yes, it makes sense because he fits into the defense with Wink Martindale. Ultimately, he's going to be a backup here, and I don't think that's what he's looking for. Peters is apparently speaking to the Las Vegas Raiders. They've had some interest in signing him. He might start in that defense, but I don't think he starts in this New York Giants defense where they need to develop Deonte Banks as a starter, and they have Adoree Jackson, who is a very high-quality starter. So I don't know if Peters really fits into the defense, but I will say he's coming off of an injury. He is a veteran, aging player at this point. He's entering the twilight of his career. He could cash a check and compete as a backup and just provide some quality leadership as a veteran in the locker room for the Giants. That could absolutely happen. He knows Jihad Ward. He knows a bunch of these guys, these former Ravens on the Giants defense that have signed to play with Wink Martindale. And again, he knows Wink Martindale. So he could just be a good culture fit, good locker room fit for the team. And again, just a veteran defensive back that you can get quality football out of in case you need him. So, God forbid there's any injuries at the cornerback spot, Peters could totally step in, fill in, and be a solid contributor for the Giants defense. So, I think it makes sense in some facets, but it's not a deal that I would necessarily rush to get done. I think that if I were the Giants, I'd wait until training camp, see how things shape out in the secondary, see if we do sustain any injuries, and if Peters is still out there, then I'd give him a call, consider signing him and having to compete on the back end of the roster. So those are our three free agents that we've identified that could potentially make an impact for the New York Giants at this stage in the offseason. There really isn't much out there on the open market, but these players ranging from a variety of price points with these three guys. We really gave you a high end, a middle end, and the low end player with each one of these, but they all make sense for the Giants in different ways, and I could see any one of these guys ending up in Big Blue, but at the same time, I could see them ending up elsewhere. It's going to be interesting to see how these final rosters shape out, and another thing to keep in mind is the Giants might not rush to sign any free agent because they know that there's going to be roster cuts coming up next month and in early August. Of course, once we get into the preseason, teams have to trim those rosters from 90 to 53. That's going to be 40 players on each team just about getting released and put onto the waivers, most of them. So the Giants might be frugal with their money. They might be really smart to wait and try and claim some guys off of waivers like they did with impact player Isaiah Hodgins. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Giants fill out this roster. But of course, we're going to update you on every move that they make right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and make sure you follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Fireside Giants. Plenty of New York Giants daily content coming your way on your social media channels. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.